Love is rarely logical. It isn't born from lists, rules, or surface appearances. It grows in the shadows of the mind, where desires form without permission. Attraction is not about force, but about influence. It is not about chasing, but about shaping experiences so deeply that the other person cannot help but feel a pull towards you. What follows are not ordinary gestures of romance, but psychological triggers, subtle, powerful, and often hidden, that awaken emotions no woman can easily resist. Mystery is one of the most powerful forces in human attraction because the mind is always restless when it doesn't have all the answers. When everything about you is placed on the table too quickly, it leaves nothing for the imagination to grasp. People don't fall in love with what is obvious. They fall in love with what they can't quite figure out. That's why the unknown, the unanswered, and the unsolved have such a magnetic quality. A man who doesn't rush to explain himself, who doesn't instantly reveal every story, every thought, every secret, becomes a puzzle. And people cannot resist puzzles because the human mind hates unfinished patterns. Think about it. When you meet someone who tells you everything about themselves in the first few conversations, their past, their goals, their weaknesses, you may feel informed, but you don't feel intrigued. There is no tension, no chase, no fire left to uncover. But when someone reveals only parts of who they are, leaving gaps in the picture, curiosity begins to take over. Curiosity is not passive, it's active. It pushes the other person to keep leaning in, to keep searching, to keep wanting more. And in relationships, that curiosity transforms into attraction because the person is now emotionally invested in solving the mystery. Mystery also signals value. When you don't feel the need to overshare, when you don't place every detail of your world at someone's feet, you silently communicate that your life is worth discovering. You aren't desperate to be understood. You're selective with who gets access to your inner world. That subtle restraint says more than words ever could. It suggests confidence, self-respect, and depth. Women, in particular, respond to that depth because it sets you apart from the predictable, surface-level conversations that surround them daily. A mysterious presence is unforgettable because it lingers. Even when you are not there, her mind is busy filling in the blanks, replaying your words, wondering about your silence. Mystery doesn't mean being cold or distant. It means being intentional. It means sharing just enough to spark interest while leaving certain questions unanswered. It means letting your actions carry weight while your words remain slightly out of reach. For example, instead of explaining every detail of your past, you drop fragments, a story half told, a smile that suggests more beneath the surface. That small gap you leave behind becomes the space where attraction grows. She starts wondering about your history, your choices, your secrets, and that wondering ties her attention to you. What makes mystery so irresistible is that it turns you from a person into a narrative, from a man into a story that she wants to keep reading. Every time she thinks she has you figured out, a new layer appears, and that unpredictability keeps her hooked. Familiarity can breed comfort, but it can also breed boredom. Mystery, on the other hand, breeds fascination. And fascination is the soil where desire takes root. By controlling what you reveal, and when you reveal it, you don't just make her curious, you make her captivated. Scarcity is one of the oldest triggers of desire, and yet it is one of the least understood. The mind values what is rare, what feels difficult to access, what carries the risk of slipping away. When something is always available, the sense of urgency fades and comfort quietly replaces passion. But when something appears limited, when there's even a hint that it might be taken away, desire multiplies. This is not just theory, it is a fundamental part of human psychology. What is scarce feels precious, and what is abundant often gets overlooked. In relationships, this principle plays out with powerful force. When a man is always present, always reachable, always giving without pause, he becomes predictable, and predictability dulls attraction. But when he knows how to balance presence with absence, warmth with space, he creates a rhythm that keeps her attention locked. Imagine someone who texts back instantly every single time, who never lets a moment pass without answering, who constantly makes themselves available. At first it feels flattering, but soon it becomes expected. The excitement of anticipation disappears because there is no question left in her mind. She knows you'll always be there, always waiting. Now compare that to someone who responds thoughtfully, but not immediately, who spends time with her, but also has a life beyond her. That man creates tension. She starts to wonder, why hasn't he replied yet? What is he doing? Who is he with? These small gaps of uncertainty awaken her imagination, and imagination is where attraction lies. Scarcity is not about playing cruel games. It is about showing that your life has weight, that your time has meaning, and that you are not defined by anyone else's attention. When you are not constantly available, you send a message you are in control of your time, and she must earn it. That silent message shifts the balance of power. It makes her view your presence as something valuable, something to be cherished rather than taken for granted. And once she begins to see your attention as a privilege, she unconsciously works harder to hold it. Absence is powerful because it leaves behind a gap that the heart wants to fill. A few days of space, a quiet pause in the conversation, a night when you choose to focus on yourself instead of reaching out. These moments are not neglect, they are fuel. They allow her to miss you, and missing you is what deepens her attachment. The human mind does not crave what it already possesses. It craves what it feels it could lose. By stepping back at the right times, you make her feel that your presence is never guaranteed, and that realization ignites a stronger desire to keep you close. Scarcity makes every return sweeter. When you reappear after distance, when you give your time after withholding it, the effect is magnified. It feels like a gift rather than a routine. It stirs emotions that routine presence never could. By mastering scarcity and absence, you don't diminish love, you intensify it. You transform your presence from something ordinary into something extraordinary, and that is how desire grows beyond logic, beyond comfort, into obsession. Emotional mirroring is one of the most subtle yet powerful psychological tools for creating an unshakable bond with someone. At its core, it is the ability to reflect another person's emotions back to them in a way that makes them feel understood on a level deeper than words. When someone laughs and you laugh with them, when they feel vulnerable and you soften your tone to meet that vulnerability, when their excitement is met with your equal energy, you are sending a message to their subconscious. I understand you. I feel what you feel. And few things are more intoxicating than the sensation of being deeply understood. Human beings are wired for connection. We are drawn to people who resemble us, who validate our inner world by reflecting it back. That is why friendships form quickly when two people share similar humor, and why lovers grow closer when they feel emotionally synchronized. Mirroring is not about copying someone. It is about aligning with their emotional frequency. When she feels safe enough to express herself and sees that her feelings are matched, even without explanation, she begins to sense that you are different from the rest. Others may hear her, but you feel her, and that difference lodges itself into her memory. Imagine she tells you about a moment of stress in her day. Most people might brush it off or give quick advice, but if you slow down, lower your tone, and reflect that stress with empathy, she feels the shift. You don't need to solve her problem. You simply need to show her that you get it. That small act of emotional alignment sparks intimacy, because now her nervous system associates you with comfort. On the other hand, when she is celebrating something, if you allow yourself to step into her excitement and match her joy, her brain begins to attach those high emotions to you. Over time, you become her safe space in both storms and sunshine. What makes emotional mirroring so powerful is that it bypasses logic and speaks directly to the subconscious. She doesn't sit there thinking, he's mirroring my emotions, so I trust him. Instead, she simply feels closer without knowing why. That closeness builds a bond that others cannot compete with, because it isn't based on surface charm or words, it's based on raw emotional resonance. And once someone feels that bond, breaking it feels unnatural, even painful. The secret to mastering emotional mirroring is presence. You must actually pay attention, listen with more than your ears, and allow yourself to feel alongside her. It cannot be faked, because forced reactions break the illusion. When done right, mirroring weaves an invisible thread between you and her, a thread that tightens with every shared smile, every mirrored sigh, every synchronized emotion. That thread is the foundation of deep attraction because love is not built on logic, it is built on the feeling of being seen, felt, and understood. When she experiences that with you, she begins to crave your presence, not just for who you are, but for how you make her feel within herself. Attraction rarely grows in straight, predictable lines. It thrives in contrast, in tension, in rhythm. That is where the push-pull technique reveals its power. When you give someone all your attention without pause, it becomes normal, expected, almost invisible. But when you create moments of warmth followed by brief withdrawal, you awaken a different kind of desire. She begins to feel your presence as something uncertain, something that cannot be taken for granted. That uncertainty sparks longing because the mind always works harder to secure what it fears slipping away. The push is when you lean in, when you offer attention, laughter, connection. It's the warm eye contact, the genuine smile, the playful teasing. In those moments, she feels your energy, she feels wanted, and her emotions rise. Then comes the pull, the subtle shift where you step back, not with cruelty, but with intention. You might end the conversation on a high note, leave her message unanswered for a while, or suddenly redirect your focus to something else in your life. That pull creates a small gap, and inside that gap, her imagination takes over. She wonders why you stepped back, why you seem so engaged one moment and distant the next. That wondering creates tension, and tension is the seed of attraction. The brilliance of push-pull lies in how it triggers both hope and uncertainty. When you push, she feels chosen. When you pull, she feels challenged. The cycle keeps her guessing, and guessing keeps her emotionally invested. Too much push with no pull, and she feels smothered. Too much pull with no push, and she feels ignored. But when the two are balanced, it creates a rhythm that keeps her heart engaged, because she never fully knows what comes next. That unpredictability makes the connection feel alive. Consider the difference between someone who always floods her with compliments and someone who offers them sparingly at the right moments. The first becomes background noise, while the second lands with impact because she never knows when it's coming. Or think of the man who gives hours of conversation daily versus the one who sometimes cuts it short, leaving her wanting more. The latter stirs her emotions far more deeply because desire is always stronger when it's left unsatisfied. The push-pull works because it awakens that hunger again and again. It's not about manipulation, it's about energy. Attraction isn't static, it's dynamic. Just as music relies on both sound and silence to create beauty, relationships rely on both closeness and space to create desire. If the music never paused, the song would lose its impact. In the same way, if you never pull back, your presence loses its power. When you master this rhythm, she begins to chase the moments of push and anticipate the moments of pull, tying her emotions more tightly to you. And once she feels that addictive cycle of closeness and distance, she doesn't just want you, she craves you. Every emotion a person feels in your presence becomes linked to you, whether you realize it or not. This is the essence of anchoring with positive emotions. The human brain doesn't just experience feelings in isolation, it connects them to the people, places, and circumstances that surround those feelings. When a woman laughs with you, when she feels excitement, when her guard drops and she feels free, her subconscious mind begins to associate those states with your presence. Over time, you stop being just a person to her. You become a source of those emotions, a living trigger for the feelings she craves most. Think about the moments that stick in memory. They are rarely the neutral ones. They are the highs and lows, the times of joy, laughter, surprise, and comfort. If you are consistently the person tied to her best emotions, her brain wires you into her inner world. It's no longer just about liking you for who you are. It becomes about needing you for how she feels when you're around. That is the hidden psychology of anchoring. The key lies in presence. Too often, people try to impress others with words, status, or material things, but what truly lasts is emotional impact. If you create a space where she feels lighter, where stress fades, where her natural self can shine without judgment, you have already planted an anchor. She won't consciously analyze it, but she'll notice that being near you feels different, feels better. And because humans are wired to chase pleasure and avoid discomfort, she will begin to seek out your presence without even realizing why. It's not about forcing laughter or manufacturing joy. It's about knowing when to amplify the moments she's already experiencing. When she smiles, you amplify that energy. When she's celebrating, you celebrate louder. When she's nervous, you calm her with confidence. Each interaction becomes a small deposit in her emotional memory bank, and every deposit ties you closer to her. Soon, the very thought of you begins to trigger the same emotions even when you're not around. That's the power of anchoring. It lingers. Anchoring also thrives in novelty. The more unique the experiences you share, the stronger the anchor becomes. If you do something exciting together, something she doesn't often experience, her brain cements that thrill with you. The more rare and powerful the emotion, the deeper the connection forms. It could be a shared adventure, an inside joke that only the two of you understand, or a moment of vulnerability where she felt completely accepted. Those experiences are not easily replaced, and because they are tied to you, neither are you. Over time, anchoring makes you indispensable, not because you demand her attention, but because she can't separate the joy, the comfort, and the excitement she feels from your presence. Others might talk to her, but they don't make her feel the same way. Others might spend time with her, but they don't light up her emotions the way you do. That emotional contrast sets you apart in her mind and, more importantly, in her heart. Once you become the anchor of her best feelings, walking away from you doesn't just mean losing a person. It means losing the emotions she now depends on you to feel. Validation is one of the most underestimated forces in attraction, yet it holds a power that goes beyond compliments and surface approval. At its core, validation is the subtle acknowledgement that someone is seen, valued, and chosen. When done right, it cuts through noise and creates a deep emotional mark. But the secret lies in how it's given. Too much validation, given too freely, becomes empty. It feels routine, expected, and loses its weight. But when validation is rare, intentional, and tied to genuine moments, it carries the power to shape how she sees herself and how she sees you. When a woman feels truly validated, it doesn't just make her feel good in the moment. It alters the way she perceives the bond. She begins to associate your presence with empowerment, with a sense of being special in ways that others don't provide. And that subtle distinction is what sets you apart. Anyone can throw words of praise, but when you recognize something unique about her, when you highlight a quality that others overlook, it resonates on a deeper level. She doesn't just feel admired, she feels understood. The trick is restraint. Validation loses its impact when it becomes constant or exaggerated. If you tell her she's beautiful every day in the same way, the words fade into the background. But if you pick the right moment, when she least expects it, when she feels uncertain, or when she's doing something meaningful, that validation lands with power. It becomes memorable because it feels earned, not automatic. And in that memory, she starts attaching greater significance to your opinion of her than to anyone else's. Validation also works because it connects directly to a person's sense of identity. Everyone wants to feel important in some way. And when you are the one who reflects that importance back to her, you become intertwined with her self-image. She starts to measure her worth not only through her own eyes, but also through yours. That shift can be subtle, but it is potent. It's the difference between a man who drowns her in generic compliments and a man who makes her feel like she has qualities no one else can see. This form of validation doesn't require grand gestures. Sometimes it's a simple acknowledgement of her effort when no one else notices. Sometimes it's pointing out her intelligence, her creativity, her resilience when others only focus on her appearance. Sometimes it's the way you tell her that being around her changes the energy of the room. These moments of recognition strike deeper than endless words of flattery because they feel tailored, authentic, and rare. When you master this subtle art, you shift from being just another voice in her world to being the voice she wants to hear most. She begins to crave your acknowledgement, to seek your approval, because it carries more weight than the validation of others. And once that dynamic is established, she doesn't just want your presence. She needs it. Because in her heart, you have become the mirror that reflects her worth back to her, and losing that reflection would feel like losing a piece of herself. Attraction has never been about chance. It is shaped, guided, and magnified by the way you move, the way you hold back, and the way you trigger emotions beneath the surface. Mystery sparks curiosity, scarcity fuels desire, mirroring builds connection, push-pull creates rhythm, anchoring ties you to her best emotions, and validation makes her feel chosen in ways no one else can. Together, these forces work silently, weaving a bond that logic cannot explain and distance cannot weaken. Love is not won by chasing. It is drawn out by becoming the man who understands the hidden rules of the mind and dares to play them with intent. And when you master these subtle arts, you don't just make her love you. You make her feel that she never truly had a choice.